Members of council, I'll call this meeting of Wednesday, February 28th, 2024 to order. Please feel free to join me in a moment of personal reflection. And for those of us who had a chance to work with Peter Rodriguez from Pickering as a regional councillor, please keep him and his family in thoughts in your heart. Thank you. The region of Durham exists on lands that the Mississauga and Anishinaabeg inhabited for thousands of years prior to European colonization. These lands are the traditional and treaty territories of nations covered under the Williams Treaty, including the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, Alderville First Nation, Hiawatha First Nation, Curve Lake First Nation, and the Chippewa nations of Georgina Island, Beausoleil, and Arama. We honor, recognize, and respect the Indigenous peoples as right holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live. In our efforts towards reconciliation, we continue to build and strengthen relationships with First Nations, as well as the large Métis communities and a growing Inuit community here in Durham. We're committed to learning from Indigenous values and knowledge, building opportunities for collaboration, and recognizing that we are all connected. Members of council, before I ask for the roll call, it was sad to hear of the passing of former Pickering Regional Councillor Peter Rodriguez. Many of us had a chance to work with Peter and from 2010 to 2014, and he passed away on February 22nd. I know that Mayor Ash had recognized Peter and a tribute to him at their Monday council meeting, but he was very well known to council and city staff prior to being elected because he was very involved in his community. Also, I'd like to recognize that today is Pink Shirt Day. It began in 2007 when grade 9 students in Nova Scotia were bullied for wearing a pink shirt to school. Two grade 12 students from the same high school, David Shepard and Travis Price, organized a high school protest to wear pink in support of the student. Pink Shirt Day has since been recognized annually worldwide, encouraging ideas of diversity, inclusion, and acceptance, and to be welcoming and supportive with colleagues, clients, friends, and families, and to stand up against anti-bullying. Mr. Clerk, before we do roll call, I would like to recognize that Mayor Ash, Mayor Foster, and Councillor Wu are representing the region and their communities in Ottawa at a nuclear summit, and Mayor Collier is in Toronto representing the Police Services Board. Mr. Clerk, could you do a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Electronic roll call is starting now.
Members of council, we have 24 members in the room. I'd also like to welcome Councillor Butt, who is here from Pickering today, representing Mayor Ash as their regional representative. So thank you for being here today. Members of council, we'll move on to declarations of pecuniary interest. Mr. Clerk, online. Okay, none in the room, so we'll move on. Members of council, we'll move all the okay, actually we're on adoption of minutes, so thank you. Moved by, Councillor, you're moving all four? Okay, so moved by Councillor Miriam Pietri, seconded by Councillor Lee, that the minutes of 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4 are now on the floor. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. There are no presentations. There are no delegations. Members of council, there are communications items. There are three. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, we're going to move 7.1 as the recommendation. So could I get a motion to appoint? Now, Members of council, this has to be someone from the Planning and Economic Development Committee. And as chair of that, would you like to move somebody, Councillor Chapman?
So
There you go.
I
Thank
would
you.
move, seconded by Mayor Carter, Councillor Pickles. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Just move nominations closed then? Could I get a mover to close nominations? Well, first of all, before we do that, Councillor Pickles, would you accept this? Thank you. I move nominations be closed. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Chapman, Mayor Carter. On closing nominations, all those in favor? Okay. On the recommendation to appoint Councillor Pickles, all those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. And congratulations, Councillor Pickles. We'll move. We'll move on to 7.2. It's deals with the memorandum dated February 28th, 2024 from Alexander McPherson, our solicitor. Can I get a mover? Okay. So moving Councillor Marin Pietri. So your mic's on.
Yeah, move A, C, B, C, and D of report CC 05.
As recommended, okay. Looking for a seconder? Councillor Shahid. Okay, the item's on the floor. Okay, seeing none, not online. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, members of council. There is one additional piece of correspondence that was sent out to all of you yesterday. Could I get a member of council to refer 7.3, Mr. Clerk, to item 3 of the F&A? Moved by Councillor Brenner, seconded by Councillor Anderson. On referring that to item 3 of the F&A, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. Okay. Okay. Could I have the sheets, please, Mr. Clerk? Thank you. Okay, members of council, Councillor Leahy's not here. Is he online? Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, and I will, we'll need a seconder from Finance Administration. Councillor Lee, thank you. So moved by Councillor Leahy, seconded by Councillor Lee, that the recommendations contained in items 1 to 3, inclusive of report number 1 of the Finance and Committee, be adopted.
Mr. Chair, with respect to item 3, it's moved in accordance with the contents of the memo.
Yes, and item 3 is moved in with respect to the memo that was issued last night. Okay, so, all right, so we have all 3 items there. Are there any polls? Mr. Clerk, online? So we'll vote on all 3. Okay, on the items, we'll call the vote. All those in favor is recommended. In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. We'll move on to Health and Social Service Committee that moved by Mayor Roy, seconded by Councillor Dyes, that the recommendations contained in items 1 and 2, inclusive of report number 2 of the Health and Social Services Committee, to be adopted. Polls. Online? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none. That carries. We'll move on to Planning and Economic Development, moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Pickles, that the recommendations contained in item 1 and 2, inclusive of report number 2 of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, be adopted. Polls. Online? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? That carries. We'll move on to Works. That the recommendations contained in item 1 and 2, inclusive of report number 2 of the Works Committee, be adopted. Moved by Mayor Barton, seconded by Councillor Marin Pietri. Items to be pulled. Online? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. Okay. Okay, 1 second, please. There are 3 items, 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3. So these are committee of the whole reports, so we'll deal with them individually. So can I get a mover to put 10 point, well, we can put all 3 on the floor, and then we'll ask for polls. So could I get a mover on the committee of the whole reports, 10.1, 10.2, and 10.3? Councillor Lee and Councillor Shahid. Okay, polls. 10.1. Okay, online. Okay. On the remainder, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. On 10.1, Councillor Shahid.
Thank you, Chair Henry. I'm just read some of my reports over the last few days, and then it was a resident who had come to me that there was a motion placed or discussion on fares to be free on holidays. And I'm not sure, I'm trying to read the report, I couldn't pull it, and I couldn't get the time to connect with Mr. Holmes, but I was just wondering if that was the discussion at the committee level. If not, I would just take this conversation on the side with Mr. Holmes.
Okay, I don't recollect that discussion, Mr. Holmes.
There was a motion for fare-free transit on Christmas Day, and the longstanding practice of free transit on New Year's Eve after 7 p.m., which we have implemented, but no other additional holidays.
I see, because there were some people from backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and there was a discussion on fares on Diwali and Eid and Hanukkah. So these were the discussions we had with some residents who emailed me, and there was a call as well. So I'm wondering if that consideration could be considered.
Thank you. Through the chair, we can consider that. Perhaps we can chat offline to get more specifics.
I
and
would
go
love
from
that,
there.
and I do apologize for not connecting with you earlier. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to ask for a recorded vote on this item.
Okay.
I think it's not going to surprise anybody because I'm doing my annual "Our fares are too high" speech. We talk about not attracting as many riders as we would like, but we almost annually forget that the fares we generate are the largest barrier to people using our transit system. And when you compare our transit costs, especially with these new proposals, to our neighboring municipalities, we're at the top of the list. TTC, charges less than we do. Ottawa Transit, less than we do. And we can go right down the list. That there are people who would like to use our transit system, but are simply priced out of its operation. And given that transit is supposed to be the transportation method of last resort for people who can't purchase vehicles for their purposes, we are getting to the point where transit is the transportation system of no resort. And I get complaints almost on a weekly basis from residents who are saying, we can't afford the rates you keep charging. And it's not just people who are, on fixed incomes, although they do make the majority, especially our seniors, who are seeing ever increasing rates, to the point where they just don't have the money to take the bus. And I'll give you one little story, which I'll repeat. We have a senior center in Oshawa that offers people a $2 lunch for seniors. The problem is it takes over $10 to get there and back on transit. So what's the good of having a $2 lunch if you've got to pay to get there? Now, the senior centers have tried to put in vans and other ways to get people there, but they fill up very quickly. So I think we really need to look in our strategic planning process of just what we see transit to be moving forward, and whether or not we have got to the point where our fares, can't be the only driver of revenue. That if we want our revenue to rise, then we need more riders. And I would suggest to you that if it did a proper analysis, if we reduced our rates and increased our ridership, we'd raise more revenue. But what we're doing is we're raising rates and driving away ridership. So I just want to leave that to you as a thought. I will not be supporting the fare increase. I don't think that's a surprise to any member of council. It's been my position for a number of years. I think we need a very serious cost-benefit analysis between ridership and rates and ask ourselves, are we literally costing ourselves revenue in the long run? Thank you.
Councillor Crawford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I appreciate the comments from Councillor Nicholson. If transit paid for transit, then we wouldn't have the need to raise the fares. It doesn't pay for transit. And our ridership is higher than it's ever been pre-COVID. So people are using the transit. We had a really interesting conversation at TAC, and it was Chair Henry that brought up the point that transit is charged the carbon tax. And I think it's $1 million, if I'm not mistaken, roughly, for each of our vehicles. And we're the only source of getting people out of their cars and reducing emissions that way. Wouldn't it be great if we could take that $1 million that is being charged through carbon tax and apply that to getting more buses or reducing rates? So, it's like we said at the beginning of this term, we're either in transit or we're not in transit. And we committed to 2% to transit at that time. And, so council has to make that decision whether we're in this business or not.
So just to correct that, and my calculation was wrong at the Transit Committee meeting, but Mr. Holmes, the carbon tax on diesel fuel for our transit fleet is about $1.7 million. It's 1.7, so I'll never do math in my head again. I'll always use a calculator, but you're right. If the whole purpose is to get people into buses, then carbon tax on public transportation is a little ironic. So, any other, Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Holmes, who is our esteemed General Manager of Durham Region Transit. Is there a correlation between lower fares and higher ridership?
Thank you. And through the chair, there is a link between fares and ridership. However, internationally, there's a stronger correlation between the level of service available that people can access and ridership. So that there is a much stronger correlation between service levels and ridership than fares and ridership. Again, I will make the comment as well that public transit is not just the lowest common denominator. It is a service that we provide for all residents, and we strongly encourage all residents to take advantage of the network, whether they have a vehicle or not. Thank you.
And just a follow-up question through you, Mr. Chair. Now that it's been stated by Councillor Crawford that ridership is coming back up and is in fact higher than pre-COVID levels, the biggest complaint I have from my residents is that some routes were removed during COVID and haven't quite yet been put back. So when might you foresee, and talking about the quality and level of service, when might you see some additional routes being placed back where they were or modified to serve the areas that are potentially now underserved?
Through the chair, as council approved last year, we do have a 10-year strategy that will increase the level of transit service by 127% by 2032. 2024 is year 2 of that strategy, and we're looking forward to the budget discussions in March, where we can then share what year 2 of the strategy will look like in terms of additional service enhancements that we'll be able to implement throughout this year.
Thank you. I will certainly look forward to that, and so will the residents in my ward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Pickles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with many of the comments my colleagues have made today, but I think there's one point we sort of missed on, and I think Councillor Crawford made a reference to, transit's not paying for itself. So just for clarity to our esteemed General Manager, what percentage is transit actually subsidized from the property taxes? Because we know we subsidize it. It doesn't pay for itself. It's not a cash wash. So what would that be? What percentage?
Through the chair, our fares and revenue that we collect through both fares and other sources account for roughly 30% of our operating costs.
So 70% of the cost of delivering transit comes from the property tax collected. Is that correct?
Through the chair, you're correct.
Notwithstanding, we may get some grants for buses or conversions or various other things, but 70% of the cost of transit comes from property taxes. So the more transit we provide, the more taxes that need to be collected, and therefore the tax rate would go up. And I'm not saying I don't support transit. I do support transit, but I just want to make it clear that there's a cost associated with a higher level of service, and that's borne by the property tax rate and an increase in the property tax rate in order to deliver a higher level of service. Would that be correct?
That's a fair statement, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't want us to miss that aspect that Councillor Crawford had alluded to. So thank you.
Councillor Crawford, I know you're on the list, but you've spoken once, but you are the chair of transit, so at the end I will come back to you. Councillor Marin-Pietri.
Chair Henry, good morning. I just wanted to ask through you to transit. We do hear of the variance between the rates here and other municipalities. Some of them are single tier. Some of them may have more subsidies from other levels of government. Just wondering, I'm sure we've performed the analytics. Is there a large gap between the rates that we charge and those of other municipalities? And if there is, or even if there isn't, why is there a difference between us and them, considering, we're both providing transit? But I think the general understanding is that there's probably a different level of service. So just wondering through you if we can get an understanding of why some of the municipalities that were outlined by Councillor Nicholson actually have a lower cost rate.
Mr. Holmes?
Through the chair, transit costs are largely driven by intensification, the way that the regions are structured. So, we generally don't compare ourselves directly with the TTC because we're a very different municipality in Ottawa. We do compare ourselves, though, with Mississauga, Brampton, Hamilton, York Region, and others of similar size and similar structure. And Table 1 of the report outlines our relative comparisons to those. And for example, single ride fares at DRT, if this proposal is approved, would be $3.60, relative to York Region, which is $3.88. My Way Brampton, again, slightly different in terms of their network. They're at $3.40. When we look at the monthly pass costs, actually DRT's monthly pass costs are very comparable, on the lower end. Hamilton is a bit of an outlier because it is recognized their fares are the lowest. However, when we look at Durham Region, for example, our monthly pass would be $129.60 versus York Region at a comparable of $155, My Way Brampton at $141. Our cash fares, yes, they are the highest within our comparators. However, cash is only 6% of our fares at this point in time. And through the various, the Presto system, people can ride at a lower cost than using cash. And there's many options available now through the Presto system in being able to pay their fare, which is much more convenient for customers.
Councilmember Pietri.
Chair, I appreciate the response, and I just wanted to ask a further question to that because I think it's important that we recognize that, some of the differences that we're incurring may be associated also with levels of funding and ridership. Ridership, as we understand it, has gone up since obviously the pandemic to pre-pandemic levels and beyond. We did, perform an exercise here that sort of aligned with the province where we were allowing, children under a certain age or riders under a certain age, which was 12, to be able to ride, and that helps boost our ridership. Just wanted to ask through you to our transit staff, whether or not we're looking at other methods to be able to boost ridership further, because my understanding is that we do have upper level government funding predicated on ridership, and that formula could help to offset the rider rate costs that we're currently incurring.
Mr. Holmes.
Through the chair, as previously indicated, one of the strongest drivers of increasing ridership is service levels. When it's convenient to access and use, then ridership will generally increase. We are, however, working diligently. We did implement this past year our ambassador program, where we have dedicated staff now out in the community at various events and activities and locations where they're promoting public transit and engaging directly with residents and customers. And as well, we're looking at other options such as employer pass programs and what that might look like and how that might be able to generate additional ridership and revenue as well.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I think our DRT staff and all of the men and women that are providing the service, because I think it's something that obviously is growing with the need in our community. There are some challenges with respect to routes, as well as the positioning of bus stops in areas that are growing, that we're working with staff to be able to not only wrap our heads around, but remedy. And I think that the conversation continues. It is unfortunate that we haven't gotten to a model nationwide that affords us the ability to be able to take transit at no cost, but that's a reality that oftentimes is an evolving sort of factor when it comes to finances. And I think that in time, with the work that we're doing in other municipalities as well, we'll get to the point where we're able to offer more than just those under 12 the ability to ride our system for free.
Thank you. Councilor Brenner.
Much, Mr. Chairman. Through you to our Transit General Manager, Mr. Holmes, can you shed some light on some of the discussions that may have been taking place among other transit providers and ourselves to try and get the upper tier levels of government to become more involved than where they are, which is almost zero in terms of providing subsidies and support through either provincial or federal, as it was many, many years ago. And that's for the operating side of it, not the capital side of it.
Mr. Holmes.
Through the chair, I may ask our Commissioner of Finance to supplement my response here in regards to existing provincial funding. in addition to the work that the region is doing in terms of advocacy to both the provincial and federal levels for capital and operating funding, we're also closely aligned with the Ontario Public Transit Association and the Canadian Urban Transit Association in collaborating to advocate for additional funding. There were funding changes in the past, which has directly resulted in municipalities being responsible for both capital and operating costs. There are various provincial and federal funding programs which do support funding of capital projects. And we do like to say it's, sometimes it's easier to get the capital, but it's more challenging to get the operating dollars to actually deliver the service as we're building up the transit network. So we continue to advocate both federally and provincially for both capital funding programs as we are embarking on sort of a generational change in moving from diesel to electrification and zero-emission vehicles, as well as the operating costs that will be required and will continue to increase as we're seeing here and across the country as people are turning to public transit to meet their travel requirements.
I guess my comments, Mr. Chairman, are that clearly we're left in a catch-22 that we will need to support what's before us today to continue to provide the level of services that are required. But I would also like to think that at some point we can continue as a region through yourself, Mr. Chair, and through the resources that we have on staff to continue to put aggressive pressures on the upper tier governments, and particularly the province of Ontario, to restore a level of funding, not just for capital costs, not just for offsetting the costs of gas tax, but to actually begin to offset the operating costs, which is also one of the bigger costs is that are triggering the kinds of increases that we need to bring forward today. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you want to comment on how you may envision putting some of the pressure on. I know it's an uphill battle. I know they don't return your calls half the time, but I think it is important that we keep that pressure up and aggressively.
Okay, well, we'll continue to advocate on behalf of the direction of council, so I'll leave it at that, but thank you.
Do you need any direction from council at all, or you're good to go?
No, as we get towards the end of the meeting and announcements, I'll explain where we've got to with the last round of calls. So I'll do
Excellent.
that. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those are my comments.
I know, Councillor Anderson, you've got my attention, but you need to push your button and get on the list.
Did I speak and there's an announcement? Look at that.
It's not working. I'll come back to you at the end, okay? Councillor McDougall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this report forward. I'm probably not the best one to speak about transit because if I need to go 1.5 kilometers, I'm probably going to walk or run because I'll pay $300 US to run 42. But I wasn't here on council when we declared a climate emergency, but we've heard repeatedly that transportation is one area where we can make a dramatic change relatively quickly, as opposed to, say, in buildings. I've heard others say that, we continue to build roads at a quick pace. Meanwhile, we would like other people to take transit. Other people is the key word, to take transit. I do have a question. I'd like to ask a question just to follow up on what Councillor Pickles had stated, which is 70% of the cost of transit is burdened by the residential tax base on our taxes. My question is to Ramesh, how much of the cost of roads, be it regional and local, are carried by the tax base? Through the residential tax base, through our property taxes. How much of the cost of roads do we pay through that?
Well, 100%, except for the money we get from the government under the gas tax. But Ramesh?
Yeah, seemed like a generic question, if I can give a generic answer. In terms of operating costs, obviously it's all property tax financed. For capital projects, we do get development charges. Like, in rare instances, we get senior levels of government funding from whether it's federal tax or I think they call it Canada Community building funds, CCBF, but mostly it's all property tax and development charges.
So to follow up, Mr. Chair, basically 100% of the cost of our automobile use in terms of the roads, the operating, construction is subsidized through our property taxes. 70%, I agree 100% with Councillor Pickles, is too much for us to be subsidizing through our property taxes. And I, especially in this day and age with the collection of the carbon tax, believe that there should be funds steered into public transit. I would like to ask a question in terms of, it's wonderful that we're providing the 12 and under sector free transit. Has there been consideration, and the reason I ask this, for the next sector to have transit? Because if we're looking for a mode shift, it's at the ages of 13 to 19, where if we can get them not to participate so much in automobile usage, when they move from there on to the universal semester pass, which I have seen with my own daughter work wonderfully well in her university town, for her not to have to own a vehicle. Has there been consideration given to providing the next sector, the 13 to 19-year-old, with free transit?
Mr. Holmes?
Through the chair, we do have a number of incentive programs aimed at youth currently, and that ranges from, again, reductions of 8% for sort of those single rides. For youth who are moving towards we have the Y10 program as well for the secondary students, which further reduces it to 65% of an adult pass. We also have the 2-for-1 summer pass at this time that is basically 1 month free over the summer period. At this point in time, we have not done a review in terms of the pressures that would result from providing free transit for youth, which are age 13 to 19.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps a future consideration for that. Just to close, I'd like to think that my automobile usage would promote the ability for my children to participate in using transit, and myself possibly, such that when I'm not using my automobile, I could use transit at a more economical rate. I will be supporting this today because I do understand the economical side of this, but in the future, I'd certainly like to see us be able to move towards transit more as a society, because I think we need that mode shift. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Barton?
Hey, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I support this report. I think we're going in the right direction. I'd also like to just say to DRT, through the pandemic, Bill Holmes, your team have been phenomenal. While we were dealing with so many complexities in the transit sector, your folks continue to come to work. They continue to serve the public, and your team organized through all this that we had the right number of vehicles for the right number of residents. And as demand has increased very significantly over the last couple of years, you continue to make that happen. So thanks for that. And then you dealt with a little fire where you lost a significant amount of your fleet at the same time. So just, and your team's been phenomenal. And you've supported Uxbridge in the north in a huge way with On Demand. So thanks for what you're doing. We've had conversations really early about the cost of ridership, why free transit doesn't necessarily work. And whenever I wanted to take transit, it's been because it was convenient and faster than taking a car. So that's sort of when it works. That's why it works for New York City and for the TTC. And I know you're probably looking for a question. I probably won't give you one. But the other thing I just wanted to comment on was when you think of youth and especially seniors for $52 a month can travel all around Durham region for free with their seniors pass. That's incredible value. And I just hope that more and more people do it. And when we change our development to fit better with transit, I hope that people like Ian, Councillor McDougall, and myself, and all of us find ways to use it more often and get out of our vehicles. So thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for giving me the liberty to speak.
Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. I've listened to the conversation. It's all stimulating and it all makes sense. I'm supporting this because there's no other choice, basically. transit is not geared to generate profits or to make profit. It's there to support people. It's an essential service, as many others we provide as a government, as a region. And there's a spin-off to that. If people can get to work, they come off the welfare roll, they come off social assistance, whatever. So it's very vital. And to Councilor McDougall's point, in some jurisdiction, I don't know if many of us are aware, transit is actually a free service that's offered in many jurisdictions throughout the world, in some states in the United States as well. So it's not really a question, I'm just making an observation on that. So I am supporting this because there's really no other choice. We don't want any further cuts in transit at this point. So thank you.
So, Councillor Nicholson, normally we don't speak twice at council, but your name is on the list, and I'm sure it's for clarification on an issue, so I will go to you next.
You're correct, Mr. Chair. I just wanted a clarification from staff, and they don't have to provide it today if they don't have the information. Could they provide us with a listing and an amount of the taxes that transit pay to upper tier levels of government through sales tax, HST, gas tax, et cetera, so we know how much the upper levels are taxing transit and forcing us to tax our taxpayers to pay them?
Mr. Holmes?
Through the chair, we'd be pleased to report on that at a later date in consultation with our finance colleagues.
All right, thank you very much.
In fairness to our finance team, I'm going to ask that come back after the budget. Okay, thank you. I think it's fair to say that you can raise the issue during the budget, but it's a substantial amount of work to pull out that information. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, question to Mr. Holmes. I think earlier you stated that the fares are increasing, and I'm actually supporting this report here. My question is, even though the fares are increasing, the passes, monthly passes, if somebody wishes to buy that, I think there is a substantial saving. So am I right to say, even though the monthly passes will be a saving for unlimited rides? So just for clarification, could you state that, please?
Through the chair, our monthly passes are based on 36 trips per month at the single ride rate. So anytime a customer travels more than 36 trips in a month, those rides then are free.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Crawford, as the chair of transit, clarification or?
I just wanted to say that the announcement in this last month with the province offering the one fare is a substantial savings and long overdue in our opinion, because now a Durham rider who uses transit on a regular basis can get into Scarborough, transfer onto the TTC with no additional charges. And I've heard can be a savings up to $1,600 a month. So,
A year.
Oh, a year. Sorry, my bad. Yes, a year. So that is, yeah, that's a big savings. But that also extends into York, if I'm not mistaken, into York and any other transit systems that they'd be going on to. So that is, like, again, long overdue, but significant savings for, not as significant per month, perhaps, but per year for anyone who uses transit on a regular basis. That went into effect on Monday. So it's not a question, I guess maybe.
I'm going to take it as a question to Mr.
Okay.
Holmes. Mr. Holmes, can you explain to council how that works with transit and the GO train, please?
Thank you. And through the chair, the One Fare program, which came into effect on Monday, is funded by the Ministry of Transportation. And it does involve the transit agencies, including Durham, Toronto, Mississauga, Brampton, and York. And that program is very similar to the agreement that DRT currently maintains with GO, where currently with the One Fare program with GO, you only pay the GO fare when you do transfer between either the GO bus or GO train and DRT. And this One Fare program is very similar. There are further enhancements for other users, such as the TTC, in that they're now able to transfer between the TTC and GO without paying that additional fare. But they're very similar programs in that customers are not required to pay a double fare when they're taking a transit trip that involves multiple transit agencies.
All right, that exhausts the speakers or questions, Mr. Clerk, so we'll move on. There was a recorded vote called by Councillor Nicholson, so I'll call that vote now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recorded vote on the motion starting now. I'm looking for Councillor Yamada online. Second call for Councillor Yamada. Last call.
That carries. Members of council, we'll move on to section 11, notices of motion. If you could turn to page 73 of your agenda. Motion regarding the permanent removal of tolls. Councillor Mulcahy and Mayor Roy, I'm just looking for nods that you're ready to move ahead. I'm going to ask Councillor Mulcahy if you would read this motion into the record, please.
Thank you, Chair Henry. Let me just pull this up. This is a motion requesting the permanent removal of tolls in the provincially owned portion of Highway 407 between Brock Road, Durham Regional Road 1 in Pickering, and Highway 35-115. Moved by myself, seconded by Mayor Roy. Whereas Highway 407 from Brock Road, Regional Road 1 in Pickering to Highway 35-115 is provincially owned and tolls are set by the province. And whereas the province introduced legislation that, if passed, would ban tolls from provincially owned highways, including all 400 series highways except for Highway 407, which is located almost exclusively in Durham Region. And whereas if excluded from the proposed ban on tolls, Highway 407 would become the only tolled provincially owned highway in Ontario, resulting in unfair economic impacts to Durham Region residents and businesses. And whereas the province of Ontario has previously removed tolls on highways 412 and 418 located within Durham, demonstrating the willingness to remove existing unfair tolls on provincially owned highways, and should therefore include the provincial 407 as part of the proposed legislation. And whereas the removal of tolls on the provincial Highway 407 would reduce the cost of living for Durham Region residents and drive economic growth while ensuring fair and equitable treatment across all provincial 400 series highways. Now therefore it be resolved that the Council of the Regional Municipality of Durham hereby requests that the Province of Ontario include the provincially owned portion of Highway 407 in any legislation banning tolls on provincially owned highways, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Prabmeet Sarkaria, Minister of Transportation, and all local Durham MPPs and all Durham local area municipalities.
Okay, would you like to speak to it?
I would, thank you. Recognizing this is a very different motion than that was presented a few weeks ago, this is asking instead of temporary but permanent, and on the basis of equity. When the City of Toronto uploaded the DVP and the Gardner, that was one thing that was quite substantial. But now this level of inequality across the province is unjust. It's unfair to Durham residents. It's unfair to our municipalities. It's unfair to our economic growth. There's just no reason for us to have to pay for this highway. And, you know, on the back of discussion about transit, this is a completely separate issue when I take it into perspective that this is about not just moving people, but it's goods and services and attracting industry. So it is unfair. And I'm really hoping that not only will we unanimously support this today, but also take it back to our municipalities to endorse it as well, because we need to speak up. And this can't just come on the, eve of an election in 2026. This should be now. It's overdue. That announcement happened the day that the Premier was using the 407 in Durham Region. So, I mean, there's no irony to that. It's just, well, there is irony to that. It's just, it's so crazy that we're still paying for this highway when we get on it every day. So I look for your support.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mayor Roy is the seconder. Did you wish to speak to that? You'll have to push the request. Thank you. Again, please.
There we go. Now we're on. So I heard, and unfortunately, Mayor Ash isn't here, and I was going to commend him for his comment Monday night in terms of that this motion, which I understand that from Pickering supported, but he also believes in unicorns and the Easter Bunny as well too. That the possibility of this moving forward is, and it's unfortunate, but we'll send a recording to Mayor Ash. I am very supportive of this, and it's very interesting that with the announcement of this being made just over a week ago in Brooklyn, right at the 407 in Baldwin, in an area that we are actually talking, and I'm going to commend our staff. We met this week with staff to talk about the work that's going to happen on Winchester, which originated with the first motion that was brought forward to look at the 407 being temporarily used for a bypass around the work. And the work that our staff are doing to help to alleviate the on the Winchester construction, they have put together a very good plan, and I'm very delighted with the meeting that we had with council members, and look forward to that. But then following up, we get this announcement, a re-announcement of the 412 and the 418, which has already been in place now for almost 2 years with toll-free. But our struggles within our community, and it's all of our community, this isn't Whitby, this is a community throughout now. This is the community of Durham, where we're looking at our employment lands along the 407, the 412, and the 418, and expansion, the access to this. This is about moving people through our community as we're expanding to the east part of the region of Durham, and the congestion and what is taking place on all of our roads east to west. This will be a great advantage for all of us, be a great advantage for the fastest growing community within Canada, and we need the supports. This is about getting people moving. Yes, we're looking at other means and supports where we're looking at busing and we're looking at transit and everything, but ultimately today, there's a solution today to help congestion, and that's called the 407.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I applaud the mover and seconder for bringing this forward. It's the absolute right way to go. I wanted to just stress a couple points that councillors may not be aware of. Many people in the community think that 407 in Durham is merely an extension of the 407 ETR. It's not. They're two separate entities. The 407 ETR is privately owned. From Pickering to Highway 115/35 is classified under the Ministry of Transportation as Highway 407 and is designated as a 400 series highway in the province of Ontario. Every other 400 series highway in the province of Ontario, including the new acquisitions of the Gardner and Don Valley, are legislated in the Get Her Done Act as never to have tolls ever. The only 400 series highway, provincially owned, meaning taxpayer owned, that is going to be tolled is Highway 407 from Pickering to 35-115. Only one in the province of Ontario. And in fact, they're bringing in legislation to say that even the new highway that's being projected, Highway 413, in the west of the GTA, will also be exempt for tolling by legislation. So the question we need to ask is, what's so special about Durham's residents that we need to pay what we've already paid for? We've already paid through our provincial taxes, the construction of the highway. Now they want us to pay again. Well, everybody else in the province that's on a 400 highway doesn't have to. So we're not talking about some inadvertence, some oversight, or some historical anomaly. This is a planned taxation of the people of Durham to the detriment of our communities by a provincial government who won't do it in other areas. And I think we've got to be stressful about that. Secondly, and from my perspective, even more so, and I think both of the speakers touched on it, the impact of taxation on 407, beyond its impact to those who have to pay the tolls or those businesses who are paying the tolls, you're driving business southward to the 401 highway. And to get to the 401 highway for large portions of our community, they have to drive through our cities. And in Oshawa, that means driving through our major regional roads. And then they get on what I call the mobile parking lot, known as the 401 highway. There's a reason why the 401 highway is the largest highway in the world by usage, is because everything is being pushed by tolls and other issues to that highway. And the cost is something that we have to be very clear about. Yes, it will cost some money to the province to remove tolls on Highway 407. But they're spending hundreds of millions right now to widen 401, to take even more traffic. So if you look at the comparative, the money saved by putting more traffic on the 407 will allow us to lengthen the widening of 401. If we can take some traffic off 401, perhaps people can get east and west easier than they can now. And anybody, that's driven along the 401 around 6 to 8 in the morning, or even 5:30 to 8 in the morning, or between 3:30 and 7 in the evening, knows it's basically a mobile parking lot. And we're talking, and I want to stress this point greatly, we're talking about climate impacts. We're talking about trying to limit noxious gases into our environment. The biggest generator, I would suggest, in the Durham region of noxious greenhouse gases isn't what's always blamed. It's that mobile parking lot on the 401 where those cars are going at 10 or 15 kilometers an hour for hours, spewing out gases into our environment. So for a community and a province that says they're eco-friendly and they're transportation-friendly and they want people to grow and build, this particular tax, known as a toll, is counterproductive to every one of those steps. And it's time they recognize the reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shahid.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Henry, I'd just like to thank Councillor Mulcahy and Mayor Roy for bringing this. We all know this is an important issue. I wholeheartedly support it. This is the need of our community and the work that needs to be commencing soon. But the one thing that we need to understand is we have hundreds of immigrants moving into GTHA corridor. We are using 401 every day, and if we open 407 and make it more affordable or no fare, we will have this more family time for people to spend in the evenings and less time rushing in the morning. I think this is an equality issue. I think it's about fair share for Durham Region residents. And that's exactly what I feel. And this is about giving our Durham Region residents the ability to commute in a more timely manner. And the fact that if there is no expansion that is immediate to the 401 East corridor, then make 407 free. And I think that's the most easy answer to a lot of other concerns. The other thing, if this would be if this could be sent to the Associate Minister of Transportation, I don't know who that is, if that could be sent to them as well. Thank you.
So on that note, to the mover and seconder, would you accept that as a friendly? And may I also ask that you accept the City of Kawartha Lakes, Peterborough County, Northumberland County, and their MPs, MPPs as well? Cobourg, Belleville. Well, I'll let Councillor Chapman follow up with the rest, so.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Barton?
Hey, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to propose a friendly that may not be taken that way. So I'm looking across at Liz here. So we all know how complicated it is to fund huge capital projects like this, even when you're the province. And I like to ask for things that I think I have a chance of getting. So my proposal would be that we ask that the province remove tolls after they've had a chance to pay down some of the debt on this highway. So I would propose by January 1st, 2035, that they remove the tolls on the 407. That again is something that I think we might have an opportunity to get. And I think, so fair enough, I think we might actually, I just hearing the peanut gallery to my left, but I think it's something that's probably achievable that would be that we'd have a better chance of getting from the province, especially when we're under this sort of.
Mayor Barton, I'm not going to accept it as a friendly. I will accept it as an amendment.
Okay,
So you'll need a seconder.
let's see. Anyone want to second that?
Okay, so it's seconded by Councillor Butt. So members of council,
Thanks.
so short version, you're asking, you gave a specific date.
Yeah.
Okay, so say that date again.
Okay, so the proposal would be to have tolls removed on the provincially owned section of the 407 by January 1st, 2035.
Okay, okay. Now, Mayor Barton, you have to put it in writing and give it to the clerk, sorry.
Okay.
It's an amendment of significance. Yes, I will.
So first off, I'm going to speak against the amendment, although I understand his intent. But here's something to think about is the province of Ontario just helped out the city of Toronto by taking over all the maintenance on the Don Valley parking lot and the Gardner Expressway, right? And this is when the announcement and people started saying, oh, they're going to start charging tolls for them because now the province is going to have to maintain them. And the premier came out and said, no, we're not going to charge tolls on any more roads that we build and all that stuff. And the question was asked, what about the piece in Durham Region, right? And the answer was, no, it's already there. My second point is, in general, is when we get to it, I agree with you, Chair, we need to add those other communities because everybody's speaking about how this is going to be so beneficial to Durham. It's also going to be beneficial for transport trucks coming down from Ottawa down the 115 highway instead of going down to the 401 and getting caught in that, to be able to go across the 407, at least in part, for free. The people that drive out of Peterborough that have to go into Toronto every day or come down, they can get a little further into Toronto, into some of those areas. So we have to think about that. And we shouldn't be stating in our thing that this is good for the region of Durham. It's good for the province of Ontario, at least the eastern part of Ontario, those on the eastern side of Toronto, the GHTA, right? The other point is we need to ask this, because how many times has this provincial government made decisions that have been reversed because they've been getting poked at, all right? And this is what we need to do in this case. We need to do it, as I always say, we need to do it in a positive fashion. We don't want to, say bad words and call the people bad names, but we want to ask something for not just our residents that travel on those roads, but also the rest of the world in Ontario, because if we open up at least part of that, it could have two effects, though. I want everybody should know that. One is, the positive effect is it may take a lot of traffic off the 401, which means people will get through, goods will get through faster, and all those things. The other side of it is, it may cause some problems in Pickering when they end at the toll and have to start paying the toll, and now they're going to come down Brock Road. Regional Road, that may increase our maintenance and certainly increase the traffic in Pickering. But I think I'm willing to take that chance. Sorry, Pickering. But those are my points. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Chapman, I think that I agree. I think what they would probably take advantage of coming down the 412 before they got to Brock. So, but good point.
Hopefully that would be a better solution.
Mayor Roy, only to the amendment, please, because you've spoken to the main item.
Yeah, with regards to the amendment, that they've already taken the tolls off of 412 and 418. So that hasn't even been paid for. And I was in conversation just this past Monday with residents about this. And the moment that the tolls were put onto the 412, you could have gone up the 412 rollerblading because there was no vehicles. The moment in 2022 the tolls were taken off, the access for residents to the north has just been opened right up, where it's taken congestion off Lake Ridge, it's taken congestion out of our downtown. It has helped alleviate, and this is like case in point, it alleviates pressures and it allows for people to move wherever they may be going. So I think it's a today ask, not a tomorrow.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to commend my colleagues for their comments, with which I agree completely. I like Councillor Chapman's point to expand the horizons and to consider whom else this might impact, but I'm going to speak up for Durham Region. 740,000 people, that's a heck of a lot of votes. And we're going into and continuing into the biggest growth period in the history of Durham Region, and it's likely going to continue for the next 20, if not 30 years. And surely the province can understand the positive, beneficial economic impact of having these tolls reduced such that there's a greater flow of traffic into the region and out as well with transport of goods. So I think that's really important. And I'd like to commend Councillor Nicholson for his two-pronged approach this morning. And I'd like to add one thing and maybe reiterate in a way what he said. Taxes assessed by the province are supposed to be equitable, and they're supposed to be applied evenly across the province. Well, we had one councillor, we had this debate Monday about this issue. We had one councillor who voted in support of tolls. That the councillor has a war against the car and couldn't see why this would be an issue because it would help maintain the roads. But a lot of people, because of where they work, need to drive. And they pay a heck of a lot of taxes already through gas. But this is the one road in the province, and you can call it a toll if you like, but a tax by any other name would smell as sweet, as a guy named Billy Shakespeare once said. This is a tax, and it's a tax applied to the only road in the province of this type. It is unfair, it is inequitable, and it's wrong. And it needs to be removed to treat Durham Regions the same as everybody else in the province. And I don't think we can say that any more clearly, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Mulcahy, on the amendment.
To the amendment. Thank you. And I'll try to make this friendly, Mayor Barton. I would say we should be asking for more than we need, not less than we need. So we should be asking for a refund. As for delaying it, I think I just heard you ask that Durham residents predominantly pay for the highway before it gets handed over. So that's kind of where I have a problem. We can't afford to wait longer. We can't afford to sit on this one. So they really do need to hear us, and I'm really appreciative of the effort and the different way of looking at it. But I think that we need to push. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shahid.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just make it very simple. I believe that Mayor Barton is bringing a win-win situation here. For that, I thank him for his sentiments. I'd like to not wait 11 years, and I'd be in my 50s, so no. I'd like to go big, go big or go home. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Nicholson on the amendment.
Thank you. When I heard the amendment, I thought how do I explain this to the taxpayers of Durham? And I thought, well, I could go door to door. I could write a flyer. I could say, it says, we think you shouldn't be taxed or tolled on this road, but we've decided that we're going to let you be taxed for the next 11 years, and then we might consider taking it out. And I thought to myself, what would happen when I made that statement at the doorstep? And my first reaction would be I'd have to duck and cover real fast because the reaction from the taxpayers would not be clear. So I was going to offer, almost going to suggest a friendly amendment to my good friend Mayor Barton that only the residents of Uxbridge should be required to pay the toll, and the rest of us are not. And I think if that were suggested, I think we reject that because we would not want to be fair to the taxpayers in Uxbridge. But that's exactly what the province is doing. They're saying that everybody else gets, for want of a pardon the pun, a free ride. But for us to ride on a taxpayer-funded highway, we have to pay. And the amendment suggests that we should pay for another 11 years before we ever get a chance to have what everybody else gets today. With all respect, the amendment is untenable. It's unexplainable. It's based on a number of false assumptions, such as the taxpayers of Durham are the one who are paying for the road. Well, the taxpayers of Durham are paying for the Gardner Expressway. The taxpayers of Durham are paying for the Don Valley now. The taxpayers of Durham are paying for the QEW and for every other 400 series and non-400 series highway in the province of Ontario through our provincial taxes. And so the argument I would put is, we've already paid our fair share just like everybody else. Why are you hitting us a second time? And I think that's the point we have to keep in mind when we vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pickles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with Mayor Barton on many things, but not this one. And I think the pressure is best applied in the election cycle. We're going to see a provincial election in a couple of years. It would be a very good provincial election issue. I think it's one that the present government and anyone else hoping to hold office would do well to put forward to the benefit of the Durham Region residents. So I'd like to see it dealt with in this election cycle. And besides, by 2035, I'll be over 50.
Councillor Mayor Pietri, you were on the list and it dropped. I was just going to call. We have one more speaker and then we'll deal with the amendment. Councillor Shahid on the amendment.
Once this amendment votes down, can I have a recorded vote on this, if that's okay with the?
On the original.
On the motion, yes, please,
On the
thank you.
original motion, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so that exhausts the speakers list online. Nobody wants to record a vote on this, or do they, on the amendment? No. On the amendment, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Okay, so the amendment fails. We're back onto the main motion. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you. On the main motion, I'm just going to ask the mover and the seconder if they would consider in the now, therefore, be it resolved, if they would consider adding wording such that it would say further to include banning the future sale of provincially owned highways. Because personally, I think that to fix our motion, I would just consider selling it alongside the other portion.
Mr. Clerk, that's a significant amendment. Councillor McDougall, it is significant. It's not just friendly. So if you want to move it in the form of an amendment.
No, that's okay. If that's fine.
Okay.
We'll leave it. If it gets sold, it gets sold. Thanks.
Okay. On the main motion, Mayor Carter.
So good morning, Mr. Chair. So couple things. One is we're into heavy debate in regards to our own budget and the budget pressures that are there, and the expectations of our residents in regards to providing services, and of course, our capital expenditures and infrastructure pressures that are on all of us. I know I speak for the city of Oshawa at this particular time. I think our infrastructure deficit is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $800 million, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to be able to address that. And I think most of my colleagues in the room also are facing the same type of structural challenges. I understand this motion, and I understand the notice of motion. At the City of Oshawa, we passed it at our meeting on Monday. But I did comment in regards to my experience with tolls. I think the reality being is that, as you know, Mr. Chairman, I spend a little bit of time south of the border. And in those particular circumstances, tolls work well because the dollars that are raised out of tolls go towards highway improvement. As a matter of fact, massive projects that happen. And it does help offset the cost of the maintenance and care of the highways themselves. Now, where the debate comes down in this country is we could go from Simcoe Street on the 407 to, let's say, Thixon for $97 one way, kind of idea. Now, I know that's an exaggeration, but the toll cost factors in Ontario are way off base based upon what happens in other places. In the United States, I can travel on the 417 from the Orlando airport into Celebration for about $1.75. That's what it costs. And that's a 21-minute drive. You could go from Orlando to Miami for about $14. If I want to go from Simcoe to the airport, I think it's $54. So I think that there are advantages in regards to tolls being utilized at a reasonable cost as long as the dollars are allocated in regards to infrastructure. The other thing is we've had many conversations about the environment and how are we going to change people's behavior and how are we going to get people to do things differently. And part of that is to have change behavior. One of the ways that change behavior happens in our world is if we start paying for things a lot more, what happens is there's a change behavior along with education. Prime example is tobacco use. Tobacco use, I don't know what packs of cigarettes are now, but I know that when I was a full-time smoker and addicted to tobacco, they weren't as expensive as they are today, but I think they're $20 a pack or something like that. And the idea behind that was to deter people from smoking and to be able to offset the costs that smoking had on people. Anyways, but we've also talked about the environment. We're trying to get change habits. I can tell you this: that Sunday night I had to speak at a function in Toronto. I had to take the 401 from my place to Don Mills and Eglinton, basically. It was an hour and 20 minutes because on the 401, of course, it was bumper to bumper. I think the average speed was about 60 kilometers an hour. And then, of course, on the Don Valley Sunday night, again, from the top of the Don Valley to Eglinton was another 20 minutes at least. And so, what we've got right now isn't working. And the reality being is that I understand that this is going to pass, and I understand that everybody believes that this is a great thing. But the reality being is we better have a conversation about how are we going to, A, meet our obligations in regards to the environment, B, is how are we going to continue to look at our infrastructure and continue to look at its care, B, is what is reasonable in regards to those that utilize this type of road network. And the reality being is that in many major cities around the world, including the UK and New York City, matter of fact, they're charging a daily rate to go into their downtown cores if you're driving an automobile. So as uncomfortable as this conversation is, I think that if it was reasonable toll rates, I think Ontarians wouldn't have a problem with it. I think that they would accept it as long as they understood that that went to the improvement of the transportation network. So yeah, I'll support it because I supported it at Oshawa, but I wanted to make sure that we spoke about infrastructure challenges that we have. It goes to the productivity of people spending 3 hours a day on the 401 for work. It impacts our environment. And I truly believe that reasonable rates of toll roads actually Ontarians would embrace as long as tax dollars were being utilized properly. That's my comments, Mr. Chair.
So thank you. To the mover and seconder, may I add a couple friendly items? Would you consider adding the Ontario Trucking Association to the list and all associations related to the farming community in Durham Region and Ontario as they ship all kinds of products down local roads? And members of council, the residents of Durham Region pay for every other road in the province of Ontario. And Mayor Carter, you're absolutely right, but you can travel across New York State from Buffalo to Pennsylvania in Canadian dollars for less than $20. That doesn't work here. So on this motion, there was a recorded vote called by Councillor Shahid, and I see nobody online. So Mr. Clerk, will you call that vote now, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recorded vote on the notice of motion starting now.
It's unanimous by all members present. Thank you. We'll move on to the second notice of motion. It's also a very significant motion requesting that the province to amend the Occupational Health and Safety Act. This is moved by Councillor McCaughey and Councillor Crawford, who are both representatives on the AMO board. And Councillor, again, as the significance of this motion, I'm going to ask you to read it into the record.
This is the motion requesting the province of Ontario to amend the Occupational Health and Safety Act to clarify the definition of employer to exclude owners that have contracted with a constructor for a project. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Crawford. Whereas in 2015, the city of Greater Sudbury, or Sudbury, entered into a contract with a contractor to complete a project in its downtown core. And whereas the contract provided the contractor would be the constructor for the project, as that term is defined in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the Act, and whereas an employee of the constructor operating a grader on the project struck and killed a pedestrian. And whereas Sudbury was charged with offenses under the Act as the constructor and the employer. And whereas after being acquitted at trial and on appeal, the Ontario Court of Appeal, in a decision issued on April 23, 2021, found Sudbury to be liable for the contraventions of the construction regulations as an employer, as it employed quality control inspectors to monitor the quality of work on the project from time to time. And whereas the Supreme Court of Canada, in a decision issued on November 10, 2023, was evenly divided 4-4 on the issue, resulting in the dismissal of Sudbury's appeal. And whereas the consequence of this decision is that municipalities in Ontario, as well as all other owners of property in the province who wish to undertake construction, are subject to being charged and convicted as an employer for offenses in relation to project sites for which they have no control and have, in accordance with the Act, contracted with an entity to assume oversight and authority over the work on such site as the constructor. And whereas the potential of an owner being charged as an employer, as that term is defined in the Act, in circumstances where it has engaged a constructor, disregards and renders meaningless the owner-constructor provisions contained in the Act, and presents an unacceptable level of increased risk and confusion for owners and contractors throughout the province. And whereas the regional municipality of Durham believes that the safety of workers is paramount, however, the safety of workers on construction projects in Ontario is not increased by placing liability on parties that do not have control of and are not responsible for the conduct of the work on such sites. Now, therefore, be resolved that the Council of the Regional Municipality of Durham requests that the province amend the Occupational Health and Safety Act to clarify the definition of employer, to exclude owners that have contracted with a constructor for a project, and that this resolution be provided to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable David Piscini, Minister of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development, the Honourable Paul Calandra, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, Mayors and Regional Chairs of Ontario, the Council of Ontario Construction Associations, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, and the all Greater Toronto Area municipalities.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, please, just briefly, because I'm getting tired of speaking. I think Mr. Hunt probably would have more to say about this, so I'm hoping that he does. It's a lot of legalese. However, it's the risk and liability. I'll just highlight it's incredible. And this ruling does put us all in a position, every municipality across Ontario, as well as property owners across Ontario. And when you consider hiring somebody even at your home that is insured and follows the rules as per their direction, you're still responsible should something happen if you own that property. So I'm hoping that we will be unanimous in this one as well, but I'm also hoping that we all take this back to our lower tier municipalities. I sensed a sigh of relief from staff when I was talking to people about this. So I think that it's more important than I even saw it being than as I start to dive into it. So I'm sure that Councillor Crawford might have something to say on this, but I would really like us to hear from Mr. Hunt as well. Thank you.
Okay, so, Counselor, I'll accept that as a question to Mr. Hunt. Mr. Hunt, would you like to comment on this item?
Yes, I mean, I think an unfortunate example of the province not really understanding what happens at a municipal level, this decision, it's a state of affairs which cannot remain. As the Councillor Mulcahy pointed out, what we have as the end result of the Ministry of Labour's decision to push forward this appeal is a situation where on a job site, there are in fact now 2 people effectively responsible for the safety of the site, which is of course a recipe for disaster. And it goes against the entire scheme of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which is to provide a very clear chain of liability that goes up from the worker, in the field and their responsibility to wear their PPE, right up to the employer to make sure they're properly supervising their employees for their safety. It's a scheme which has worked well in the province for many years to protect the safety of workers. And unfortunately, the Ministry of Labour has undone that scheme with one poor decision to advance this. And it has to be fixed. It is not appropriate for the owner of a property who is not the employer in law of the contractor that's on the site to be responsible for supervising those employees at the same time as that constructor or contracting company is responsible for supervising those employees. We don't have an employment relationship, and we don't have the same ability to protect the safety of those workers as the contractor on the site does. And so it does have to be changed. I will say that the region, as well as all the regions in the province, joined this fight at the Supreme Court of Canada. It was unfortunate we got a draw decision. We followed up and actually asked an unusual request for the first time that it be reheard because they were missing one of the justices, which would have broken the tie. That was recently denied. And we're not stopping. We've retained the same lawyer jointly to advocate directly with the legal department at the Ministry of Labour to fix the mess that they've made. So we appreciate the efforts of our regional council in supporting those efforts, and we'll continue to work on our end to fix this as well.
Okay, thank you. You're on the list, Councillor. Actually, you're not on my list, but next. Okay, the seconder hasn't spoken yet. Okay, so, but could you push your button, please? Okay. Councillor Crawford is the seconder of the motion.
Thank you. This is, yeah, absolutely believe in this motion. Ajax had a situation on one of our roadways last year, actually, where a trench collapsed. 4 people were in the trench. 2 were killed, 2 were badly injured. And, because of the negligence of the construction company, I can't get into the details of it, but this is, absolutely important that we have this clarification in the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Schumer.
Thank you very much. And I fully support the intent here, but I would just like to ask the Director of Legal Services, the one portion of this, or the phrase that I've got a bit of an issue with, is the saying that we have no control. So can Director of Legal Services confirm that in these kinds of cases we have no control over work being performed on our property?
Mr. Hunt.
I think it's a fair statement. In terms of request at the political level for this to change, I think that is a fair statement. And Mayor Schumer is correct in his question, in the sense that, obviously, as the region being a responsible supervisor of a construction site, we do exert a level of supervision over that site. So, as you might imagine, with any municipal or regional project, we do have regional people who make regular visits to the site and follow up to ensure that the contractor is fulfilling their contractual obligations. And many of those contractual obligations are things like safety measures. So it's not as if we do not supervise those sites, but that's in our role as a contract manager. And we do have to rely on that contractor who's on the site, who has that direct employment relationship. So the people who are operating the machines and setting up the safety equipment, they do not work for us. We do not have the ability to terminate their employment or to exert discipline over them for their failure to comply with the directions related to safety. And in that sense, I think that's where that statement comes from, that it's difficult for us to exercise the level of control that's necessary to protect the safety of the workers at the site.
Okay, thank you. I'm still having a problem with this part of it. Do we not, in our contracts with these contractors, do we not have anything in there stipulating that they will adhere to safety measures? They will adhere to various legislation regarding safety? Because if we've got that in there and it's not happening, then don't we have power to terminate the contract and exercise some control?
Mr. Hunt.
So we absolutely do have safety provisions. We rely on, as you might imagine, provincial standards with respect to safety. So those clauses, to a large extent, rely. There are many provisions of the Occupational Health and Safety Act which set out specific safety provisions for things like, for example, Councillor Crawford raised the issue of trenching. So there are specific regulations which deal with all of the details of how a trench is supposed to be safely operated, and those types of things are incorporated into our contracts. In addition to that, of course, we have all of the measures for road safety control, which are incorporated into our contracts. And so, in the event that one of our inspections determines that those contractual provisions are not being followed, then at a contract level, we can start that sort of contract management process with the constructor. It may be that they're in default. It may not be that they're in default. It may be that we give them a notice and then they're entitled to have 5 days to correct it. Or it may be the kind of thing where we need to stop work at the site. But those are the types of mechanisms that we have to control the safety at the site. They're contractual mechanisms. What the contractor has at the site is all of those employment mechanisms. And the Occupational Health and Safety Act relies on the employment mechanisms. So, for example, as I said, like a worker has an obligation under the Act to wear their PPE, and they can be fired for not wearing their PPE. The region does not have the ability to fire a worker on the site for not wearing their PPE because that worker does not work for us. We don't have an employment relationship. So we can put the contractor in a default. Maybe we can terminate the contract. But of course, the appropriate response is for that worker's employer to, start to exert discipline under their, employment contract or collective bargaining agreement with that worker to make sure they're wearing their PPE or lighting up their reverse lights. I think in the Sudbury case, it was the backup warning sounds on the on the equipment. So that's an issue with a worker that perhaps ought to have been disciplined earlier. That's not something that the region's in a position to do because these people don't work for us.
I get that the employment relationship isn't there, but if we are sending out inspectors to the field and we have provisions in our contract that they must abide by safety provisions in legislation and regulation, I'm having a really hard time here saying that we should wash our hands or that other property owners should be able to wash their hands if they've got provisions dictating that contractors must enforce safety provisions. And we're going out there. We have some level of control on our site, and we are going out there inspecting. I'd feel a lot better if we said, look, we're not going to go out and inspect these sites because we're not enforcing breaches in safety protocols, apparently, as it may be. So, like I said, I fully understand the thought behind this motion, but I am having a real problem with saying we should be able to wash our hands when we've got provisions in contracts to enforce safety. We are sending people out onto our site to inspect work. I'm just having a real problem, with that part of this, because it seems like we are indeed possibly being aware, and we've got mechanisms through the contract to enforce it. We don't have employment enforceability, but we certainly have a contract. And if we went out there and found that safety was not being adhered to, I can't believe that we would take no action. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this is directed to Mr. Hunt. If a worker gets injured on the job, isn't that while working for a contractor, isn't the contractor responsible under the WCA?
So in terms of paying for the cost to the employee of those injuries, there would be workers' compensation, and the contractor as the employer would be responsible for compensating that employee under that scheme, whether they're paying into it or whether they're paying directly. But that is a separate scheme. That really just deals with the injuries to the employee and how they would be compensated. It's separate and apart from the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which really is solely focused on worker safety.
Okay, so this would bring this in conformity with the WCA as well. I didn't realize I had to do some research because my expertise is workers' compensation, so I didn't realize it was a different set of rules.
Yes, one deals with compensation and the other deals with safety. There's obviously overlap, but the level of detail for the safety of workers that's provided in the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the regulations is much more extensive than it is in WSIB. And using those extensive definitions and provisions, there is that scheme of responsibility, which should end, in my view, and many of my colleagues, with the employer being the constructor on the site.
Indulge me one other question. Why this never came up before the Sudbury incident? I can't recall ever seeing anything or heard of any incident such as this one.
It was, the decision on the part of the Ministry of Labor to pursue this all the way to the Supreme Court is part of the reason why it never arose before. I think the Ministry of Labor would argue that there is some level of ambiguity as to who the employer might be, and that they were interested in having the regional municipality, or in this case in Sudbury, the city, be the person ultimately responsible for the site. So they wanted to expand that definition of employer to include Sudbury, even though Sudbury, we all know, is not really the employer of the people there. However, they wanted that definition expanded so they could make as many people as possible responsible for safety at the site. And I think our issue with that is that it is not a win-win scenario to make as many people as possible responsible for the site. What it does is create confusion between the contractor, who is, in law the employer, and the municipality, who should be inspecting the site but really isn't responsible for the day-to-day activities of employees of the contractor. So that confusion, in our view, is what creates the safety risks. And it, to some extent, as I said, it undoes that clear line of responsibility that has been relied on in the Occupational Health and Safety Act for many decades.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is my opinion that I want to make sure that it's clear that these statements are coming from myself. But this is another indication to me that our court systems and those that are making judgments in regards to the interpretation of law is way off base as far as I'm concerned. Now, Mayor Schumer brought up a very good point in regards to understanding it. Mayor Regional Representative Crawford also brought up an incident. I can tell you that here's where the danger is. Care and control on a contract is written by the city in regards to hiring an outside service. There's an expectation of care and control of that area, that all aspects of the workers' health and safety are abided by, that there are rules and regulations that they must follow. Hypothetically, we have an accident at that particular site. That site, even though is being inspected on a regular basis by those that are responsible for it, the contractor and its employees do not follow the rules. There's an individual that is hurt or killed on site, and the city, of course, or the municipality, let's say, cancels the contract. Says you have demonstrated that you are not responsible. You didn't follow the rules, and therefore your contract is canceled. Pretty clear. The contractor comes back and sues the municipality for contract of canceling the contract. That's what we're talking about. That's how ridiculous this is. The city, the region, and everybody can put the rules, the regulations, the care and control right in the contract itself. Those that are responsible for delivering those services have an obligation to follow that contract. But on the other side of it is, it shouldn't be held responsible in regards to the region, the municipality, to be able to say, no, that extends, even if they break the rules, we're going to be 100% responsible for it. And this thing about saying that somebody is their employer, so I got somebody building a fence in my backyard, I got to give them a T4 slip now because I'm an employer of them? This is another demonstration of the courts not truly understanding. I'd like to say, was your head with you all day today? Because this doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense at all. We have a responsibility to write contracts and make sure that we have regulations that are followed not only by ourselves, but those that we hire, right? If they are not going to be following those rules, one is we have a responsibility never to hire them again. But if somebody gets hurt in that work environment, and we've clearly indicated that all these rules and regulations have to be followed, and they've agreed to that contract to follow those rules, and somebody gets hurt, and their contract is canceled because of the reason that they did not deliver what they agreed to deliver, and we get sued for it. And by the way, the courts agreed. So the municipality has to pay them the full contract for work that wasn't completed and what didn't follow the rules. This is another indication that our court system is not being held accountable, and it's not held publicly accountable. Just my personal opinion. And I got a list of stuff that the courts, in my opinion, should be publicly held accountable for, including our criminal code. So that's my comments. I'm going to support this 100%.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. Hard to follow Mayor Carter when he gets passionate about these issues. All I can say is, as hard as governments can do, is you can't legislate against stupidity. Okay? I take it even one step further. The municipality can say, follow the rules. The contractor we hire can say to all their employees, follow the rules. But the contractor can't have somebody standing there and say, don't walk into traffic. you know, there's going to be an assumption that the people you hire aren't total stupid. But accidents occur. This is about liability. Who's responsible? And the question I wanted to ask to Mr. Hunt to kind of clarify in my mind, and so I can understand this, does this liability that the courts seem to have imposed on municipalities and property owners, does it also apply to provincial government, provincial agencies, federal government, federal agencies as well?
So yeah, would apply to all of these types of work sites in the province, and including, notably, you know, some private sector operators who, you know, the region actually does have quite a bit of experience in managing sites like this. But there are many owners in the province who would be subject to this decision who have zero experience in construction. And in those situations, the situation could become quite dangerous.
Well, the one thing that jumped out at me, and you know, sometimes you have to get the attention of upper tier levels of government. And I would suggest, and possibly the movers could consider this, is adding an additional whereas into the body of the motion that says, and whereas federal agencies, federal government, provincial agencies, provincial government are also going to be held liable by this new definition of employment responsibility, and it could impact them in millions of dollars. That might be the red flag necessary to actually get the lawyers at the province to say, oh, wait a minute here, just like we're saying. So, you know, it's one thing to say that municipalities are going to be harmed, but once they find out their ox is getting gored too, you might see a very fast change in the legislation. So I propose that to the mover and seconder, whether they might want to consider including that clause, just so we can get the attention of the upper tier and ensure that the federal government also gets notice on the motion as well, because they may step in and say, hey, wait a minute here, that's not how we wanted this to happen. Thank you.
So, the Councillor Nicholson has asked to the mover and seconder, would you accept that as a friendly? Mr. Clerk, I'm going to ask, were you able to capture okay, so the clerk has captured the substance, he'll add it in as a friendly. I can't hear you.
Could we have Mr. Hunt work with the clerk on the exact clause wording that's most effective?
Mr. Hunt, you'll be able to add the appropriate wording and cooperate. We're getting a thumbs up from our lawyer, so Mr. Hunt. Okay, so Councillor Nicholson, we're good? Okay. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Hunt. You're on the hot seat today. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Hunt for his uncharacteristically strong language in describing his impressions of this decision. I wholeheartedly agree with him. My question through you, Mr. Chair, is if this motion and the results of this result in a reversal of the decision, would that mean that we would then revert back to the situation as it had existed up until the situation that caused the change?
So the court decision will not be reversed. However, what we are requesting is a change in the legislation initiated by the Ministry of Labor to clarify the definition. And what we're requesting is that it go back to the way it was before this decision was ever made, and that we tighten it up or clarify whatever is required in order to make sure that the court does not have any confusion as to what was intended by the legislation. I am not aware, and none of my colleagues are aware in the other regional municipalities of any concerns or incidents with the legislation as has existed previously with respect to its ability to protect worker safety. It's been an extremely effective act. It's been very effective at the municipal level, we believe, in holding our contractors responsible and ensuring safe job sites. And we didn't see any issue. So it's not as if there's something that both sides agree needed to be fixed. We just created confusion where none existed before, and now it's less safe than it was.
Thank you. And I think you've answered my second question, so let me just make sure of that. If we, there may not be a complete reversion back to the way it was before. You're suggesting that if there are any concerns, that they just simply be tweaked because what we had before worked perfectly well.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That clarifies it for me.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor Pietri.
I'd like to refer this back to staff.
Okay,
And if I could speak to it, because I think we could speak to referrals.
well, you'll need a seconder on the referral. Seconded by Councillor Lee. Okay, so the referral is on the floor.
Yeah.
Councillor Mayor Pietri.
I tend to agree with Councillor and Mayor Schumer on this one. I'm uncomfortable because accidents do happen on job sites. And if you consider the fact that we're trying to do our best to trend towards hiring contractors that are reputable and that are bonded, but at times we look at the lowest common denominator for economic purposes, the one that's the lowest bidder. I think a lot of our practices tend to create issue, and I know that our legal department is not going to allude to how many issues that we've been involved in as a municipality, but I think widespread across the country, whether it's AMO or FCM, and the fact that the Supreme Court itself had a four drawn decision is clearly indicative that we may need to speak about this, maybe in close quarters, have staff take a look at this differently. I am not comfortable washing our hands of responsibility on a job site. So that was the reason for my putting the referral forward.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands. Councilor Manugo doesn't want to speak to the referral. He wants to speak to the main item. So members of council, so this is on the referral. Push your button, please. Councilor Mulcahy?
Yes, just briefly. Our staff wrote this notice of motion based on the legal need to change the Ontario Act. And it's changing definitions within the Act to help protect municipalities. If somebody is killed on a job site in Coe Hill building a fire hall, it's crippling to those small municipalities. And this is going to be something that it's more than just a large regional issue. This is down to, as Mayor Carter said, building a fence in your backyard. You hire a contractor that has WSIB that claims to follow all of the rules and regulations, and they agree to that. You know, you have to have eyes on them 100% of the time under this decision by the Supreme Court. Otherwise, you are responsible. So I can't agree with referring it. I do believe that staff have come forward with what they feel is absolutely the best with the legal minds across the province in all the regions. So I would prefer to support this today and get these motions into the province and to the other municipalities across the province so that there's an awareness, because I think that there needs to be an act now and not delay on this one. So respectfully, I can't support the referral. So thank you.
Councillor Chapman, is this on the referral? Then please.
Thank you. This is, the motion is to ask the act to be changed so that we don't have further issues like this. It's not revisiting the Supreme Court judgment, which we can't do, and we should not suggest that because the justices have made their ruling. Given the fact that staff have put this together, assisted in putting this together, and it's an important issue, I think we need to make that today. We don't need to send it back to staff to bring us a report with a whole pile of reasons why it should be done based on what we've heard from Mr. Hunt. I think we need to get on with it today, support this, move onward and upward. Thank you.
So on the referral, that exhausts this. Okay, on the referral, there's a recorded vote. Councillor McDougall, you're speaking on the main motion, right? Okay. So it's a recorded vote on the referral. I'll call that vote now, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recorded vote on the referral is starting now. Looking for Councillor Yamada online. Second call for Councillor Yamada. Last call.
Okay, the referral loses. Councillor Mayor Pietri, you had the floor before the referral was put in, so when the referral was put in, so I'll go back to you.
Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I would have hoped that the referral would have brought back a report. As Councillor Chapman indicated, we are asking for a significant change. I do respect staff and their ability to be able to help councillors formulate motions that could provide for positive change. I'm not so sure how this will be seen if you're a victim or a family of a victim, someone that got hurt on a job site. That was the responsibility of the municipality. Not sure if that's positive change. Again, I think Mayor Carter spoke about his opinion and his, sentiments. These are mine. These are mine. And I think they're shared widely by individuals who are taking the equation of the finances and the legalities outside of the scope of what the responsibility and the impact is to families when they're affected by incidents of this nature. If your municipality is not large enough to be able to sustain the potential lawsuit, there are remedies potentially, for that. Ours is substantive enough to be able to understand, I think, widely, whether you're in media or you're in this chamber, staff, or if you're a resident and a taxpayer, that large projects, are ones that are susceptible to issues, whether they be cost overruns or accidents. And I think, to have a situation where potentially you could have a service provider, a contractor, which may be too small to even sustain, a legal fight or fine of the nature that would otherwise be sustained by the municipality, is also telling, because then you're basically leaving, and this is my opinion, and this is why I wanted a referral, to get a full report, to understand what happens if the contractor doesn't have the ability or the insurer to sustain the fine or the impact of whatever penalty that they would incur. Where does it leave the families or the people that are involved as a result of whatever accident that, God forbid, occurs? But they're realities. So having said that, there is no disrespect to anyone that's intent on moving this forward, including staff. But I thought, and I still think, that it would be prudent and respectful of all of us to have a report come forward, not in the form of a notice of motion, that we would be able to understand some of those elements. And I think that in future, because we've done a lot of notices of motion today, and I think we're going to continue to do stuff, and I can grab things that, potentially AMOR and FCM are looking forward to advancing. But some of this stuff really needs to be reported properly out of respect for council members and those who are going to be involved. If everyone else is comfortable, then that's fantastic, but I'm not.
Thank you. Councillor McDougall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this forward. I am looking at Mr. Hunt right now. I think all of us, and I look around the room professionally, but all of us owe it to each other to ensure that we work safely when we're on a job site, if we're on a job site. But as to what Mayor Carter alluded to and Mr. Hunt and others, the levers that you have that you can pull, professionally speaking, when you're on a job site and you see someone else working unsafely, are rather limited, speaking personally. It's very limited, and leaving your area of expertise and your company to speak on behalf in terms of how someone else in someone else's company is working or not working is a very delicate and precarious position. My question to Mr. Hunt is if we are deemed, I want to say, the secondary employer for this individual or individuals, that would in essence make us directors of the secondary employer. Would we be in essence personally liable for the safety of that individual of the first employer's company?
Yes, so the Occupational Health and Safety Act imposes this chain of liability. So you just follow your way up to the chain. So this puts the regional municipality in that chain as an employer. So as you follow your way up the chain, eventually, yes, the region would be liable.
And further through you, Mr. Chair, us as directors on the region or board on the board, we could be personally liable.
It is one of the acts of the province that imposes both liability as well as criminal liability on the director level of organizations that are in that chain of liability. So yes.
Okay, further. Thank you. And then to follow up, is this the equivalent of joint and several liability applied to the construction world?
It's a slightly different concept, but I think it would operate similarly, yes.
So in essence, such that, through you, Mr. Chair, if the contractor doesn't have enough, equitability to cover the loss in terms of the individual or the injuries, they can seek back to whoever engaged the contract in the first place, should they have deeper pockets, through you, Mr. Chair.
I should say, and maybe I'm going to defer to the Commissioner of Finance to speak about the risk management provisions in our contracts, but there is a slight difference here in that the way joint and several liability works is that you have another party, so it could be another driver, for example, involved in a motor vehicle accident who might be underinsured, and then the region, is the road authority with unlimited pockets. So that's the issue we have with joint and several liability. That does not exist on a region job site. And I should be clear, I know there was a question raised about what would happen to the family of a worker, for example, who might be injured on one of the region's job sites. And so I'm going to defer to the Commissioner of Finance to speak specifically, but I will say generally, you cannot be a contractor on a Region of Durham site and any municipal site in this province without having the proper insurance in place and proof of that insurance. And Nancy might have some more specifics on that.
Sure. A couple of quick things I'll add through the chair. When we establish our contracts and let those contracts, we have very complete and thorough agreements that those contracting agencies have to sign. But they also have to provide things like WSIB clearance certificates to establish that they are not contrary to WSIB practices, and that leads to those health and safety. So we have a very, very fulsome contract requirements, and from a taxpayer perspective, we pay for those fulsome requirements. We pay for those contractors to adhere to a standard of care that the region has established through those contracts. And so when, in my view, when you're looking at this saying that the region now may be responsible, you need to replace that with regional taxpayers are now responsible. And so, we pay the contractor to perform at a certain level, and with this, we then may also have to pay for the outcome. So I think there is a fairness to ultimate taxpayers here that needs to be really considered.
Okay, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mayor Watt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with many of my colleagues, but I just have a question. So if this does not revert back to how it was traditionally, and the region now becomes the employer of those contractors, how will that impact the region with respect to having experts on all safety elements of every job that comes down? I don't know who to direct that to, and maybe Mr. Hunt will start with.
Mr. Hunt?
Well, Commissioner Jagannathan might want to speak a bit to that expertise. But I think from a legal perspective, yes, I mean, and we already are responding to the impacts of this decision by saying that we now, as the region, have a legal obligation to have the capacity to not only do what we do and have always done, as the owner for safety on the site. And it's really important to note that it's not that we do nothing, and it's not that we're asking to do nothing. We have a role that we play, with which the commissioner, I'm sure, can speak to. But not only that, but now we are potentially going to have to stand in the place of the employer and also take on that role. So that's going to have some staffing obligations, which perhaps I'm not the best to speak to.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, that this decision is impractical to implement, period. I just want to, paint a scenario here. Take a project like, Simcoe widening from Conlin to Winchester, or Westney from Roslyn to Taunton, about half a kilometer to kilometer long. At any time, you could have about 10 crews working, multiple crews working at the same time. Right now, we have one inspector per site, and they're not there all the time. The best safeguard we have is through our contracts that clearly defines traffic controls, for example, every stage of the project. But we are not there at all times to make sure that traffic control is all in place. As you know, all it takes is a pylon or two to get blown away, and we are not there at the right time to catch it. And it just is not practical to implement this at all. So I've met with many of my peers in recent days following this decision, and basically, all they are able to do at this point is making sure that their contracts have all the due diligence one can think of until this gets reversed in some form or shape. Because if we are deemed an employer, the only way that's practically possible is if we start to employ contractors, right? We might as well have people on payroll to build roads and so on. That, it's just not practical at all. And as someone said, not well thought out. Thank you.
Thank you, and that was kind of my understanding as well, that we would now have to start having, our own people on all job sites at all times. So I appreciate the feedback, and that's my question, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, when we contract a job to, and somebody's awarded a contract, we're referring to our staff as inspectors, but what they're there is there to confirm that the contract is being carried out in a way that it was tendered, correct? They're not truly inspectors. They are there for confirmation that the tender is being carried out, correct?
Yes, we would have specs on the contract, as the commissioner referred to, and we're checking that those specs are being conformed with, and a big part of those are like the road safety control is a great example of something that we point in time on the day that we're inspecting, we will go there and we will advise. We don't go to it. We can't go to an employee, the worker on the site, and say, can you please move the pylon? We have to advise, well, we don't have to, but we will advise, our contact with the contractor, please enforce the safety requirements at the site. And then they use their employment mechanisms to do that.
Thank you. So Mr. Jagannathan, when we have people on a site and they recognize that something needs to happen and they want to report that someone's on a road contract wearing running shoes, they would notify the site foreman of what they've seen?
Exactly, the contractor's site supervisor.
Okay. Mr. Hunt, which ministry in the province of Ontario employs site safety officers that can walk on to any site at any given time and check that the people conducting the work are conforming to the rules of the Occupational Health and Safety Act?
That's the Ministry of Labor.
Mr. Hunt, how come the Ministry of Labor is not named in this? They have the obligation to check sites for safety. You don't have to answer that. Anyways, if there has there been a recorded vote called on this item? I'll call the recorded vote on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recorded vote on the notice of motion is starting now.
Okay, that carries. Members of council, there is no unfinished business. We'll move on to announcements. Councillor Marin-Pietri.
Chair, you'll be pleased to note that many of our municipalities come of age, and Oshawa is coming of age. March 8th will be 100 years, so our centennial will be celebrated in the city of Oshawa. I know that Mayor Carter, council members from the city of Oshawa, long-standing representatives in our community, as well as businesses, groups that have helped to build our community, our city, and essentially the region will be celebrating that day. And I hope to see you at the Regent Theatre to help us celebrate our 100 years. Now, with that, there's also some really cool things that have happened over the last 100 years in the city of Oshawa that I know that Mayor Carter has alluded that you're well aware of. You're our in-house historian, regardless of being the chair of the region, as the former mayor and someone that was interested in the city of Oshawa from day one, I think, and we hope that you'll be able to tell some stories that day. Whether they're formal or not, we look forward to hearing from you, because we've got another 100 years to go, and hopefully some more exciting things for the city of Oshawa and the region of Durham.
Well, maybe on that day we can talk about how James Bond is from Durham region. We'll have that story. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to announce that the Ajax Anti-Racism Task Force, in conjunction with the town of Ajax, will be raising the Pan-African flag tomorrow to mark commemorate the end of a very successful Black History Month. All regional councillors and yourself, Chair, are invited. It'll be at Pat Bailey Square at 11 a.m. And I think it's one of the first times we'll be raising the flag, so very proud to be part of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank members of council that supported the coldest night of the year, both in walking or showing up at the event. Mayor Barton and his daughter, and Councillor Wu, and Mayor Carter, and yourself, to let you know that the refuge raised 105% of their goal, which is just shy of 148,000. Their goal was 140. There was 13 million plus donated across Canada, because this was a national event, which was good. My team actually got $7,000 worth of donations until this morning, when Mr. Chair gave me $100 to add to that total. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and the other members of council that did donate to it. It was a very success. And this year it was one of the coldest nights of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Watt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to echo Councillor Chapman's comments as well. I actually attended the one in Uxbridge, and yes, the weather cooperated nicely to make our feet cold, and for us to recognize what they were trying to prove. But my comment is extended more to a kudos to the Durham Youth in Policing, who came with 2 buses and had raised $15,000 to that event. And they were very spirited, excited to be part of it. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to all of them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anyone else wishing to comment? Just to bring up, and before we finish, so Mayor Carter hasn't asked the question. I haven't met with leaders from Ottawa, even though 2 of them have been in Durham region, and haven't taken the opportunity to reach out to either the mayors or myself to have a conversation of the challenges around mental health, addictions, and homelessness. But I will say that I did have an encouraging meeting with MP Turnbull on the issue last week. He informed me that it's clear that the regional communications are having an impact in effectively getting across both what we are facing in Durham region and also across the country, and what we've accomplished. And he has committed to supporting us going forward to work together and advance our conversations in Ottawa. So I was happy to have that meeting. I have had meetings with MPs from both the Conservatives and the NDP, but he is the first MP that has said that he will take our issues to Ottawa. I really believe that Durham Region is a leader in this space, and that the rest of the country can learn from what we are doing. But in order to be heard, we have to have people at the other end that will listen to what we've done, where we're going, what we've done as a leader, and showing what can be done across this great country with a group of people that are like-minded. Councillor Chapman, you've been given a promotion today. You are also responsible for the confirmation bylaws.
Moved by myself, seconded by Mayor Carter, that bylaw number 2024-6 be passed.
Okay, on the bylaws, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none, that carries. Councillor Chapman on the confirming bylaw.
Sure, moved by myself, seconded by Mayor Carter, that bylaw number 2024-007, because you mentioned James Pond, right? Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Regional Municipality of Durham at their meeting held on 28th day of February 2024 be passed.
Okay, on the confirming bylaw, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? In opposition? Seeing none. Mr. Clerk, that's the business for the day. Councillor Butt, would you give us a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councillor Butt, seconded by Councillor Picos. Members of council, thank you today. Lunch is in the back. We will call the motion on adjournment. All those in favor? In opposition? None, that carries. Have a safe day.